Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today we continue our series on JavaScript fundamentals. Today we have the problem called the promise time limit. The problem says that given an asynchronous function called fn, a time called t in milliseconds, return a new time limited version of the input function if n takes arguments provided to the time limited function. The time limited function should follow these rules. If n completes within the time limit of t milliseconds, the time limited function should resolve with the result. If the execution of the if n exceeds the time limit, the time limit function should be rejected within the string called time limit exceeded. So basically, this question asks us to enhance an asynchronous function such that the promise basically returns will automatically reject if the time limit it was elapses actually. So if the time limit was ended, that we will reject it actually. So before we can start, it's important to know where do we use this type of functionality. Actually, we use this type of functionality in the long running processes. Maybe like we are making payments and we're waiting for requests from the bank, and actually payments usually takes a lot of time to be processed. Maybe we want to notify failures, things like that. So we have four approaches to solve this one, and I guess I will try to go through all of them. So the first one is that we have call function inside new promise. So basically, we can create a new promise, and by the way, if you don't know what is promise in JavaScript, a promise is a built-in object that represents the eventual completion or failure. Okay, it's represented like the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. It is a way to handle asynchronous operation in more unstructured and organized manner, making it easier to work with asynchronous code and manage the flow of data and errors. Basically, the primary purpose of a promise is to avoid the callback hill. Also, it's important to know that the promise have three states. Pending, that means the initial state of the promise when it's created. It represents an ongoing asynchronous operation, and the promise is neither fulfilled or rejected. It's just waiting to the results. Fulfilled, the state of a promise when the asynchronous operation completes successfully. It represents the successful result of the operation. Rejected, and actually the fulfilled it, and the send method actually of the promise is called. It's important to say that. Rejected, we have the third one, which is the state of promise when the asynchronous operation encounters an error or fails. It represents the reason for the failures, and the catch method of the promise is called. So I just want to show you a small example. Let me just, before starting talking about the code, let's just look at this example. So basically here, this example that you can see right now, in this example we have fetch data. In this example, the fetch data function returns a promise. If you can see that, we return a new promise, and that simulates basically the promise simulates an asynchronous operation using setTimeout. If you as you can see, we have setTimeout here, and after 2 seconds delay, the promise is fulfilled with a successful message, because we have here 2000 milliseconds. And promises provide a more elegant and structured way than sorry, I have a problem. I just wake up. Sorry. Basically, promises provide a more elegant way and structured way to handle the asynchronous operations, making it easier to manage the flow of data and handle errors in asynchronous scenarios. So this is actually what about the promise. We can talk about the promise methods also. I guess we'll not use it in this problem, but the thing that maybe like you'll be asked about, give me a minute. So basically, I don't know if I need to talk about the promise methods, but like you have then, you have catch, you have finally, and then actually use that then when a method is handled, it's fulfilled. Catch when the promise is rejected, the state of the promise is rejected. Finally, use the finally to clean up. You have something called a promise that all this method takes an array of promises and returns a new promise that fulfills when all the input promises fulfill. You have promise that race. Promise that array method takes an array of promises and returns a new promise that fulfills or rejects as soon as one of the input promises fulfills or reject. You have promise that resolve. This one method return a promise object that is resolved. You have promise that rejected. This one is return the promise object that rejected. And also you can review some documents about that. Maybe I said something wrong. But I guess no, I didn't say anything. So let's just talk about the first approach to fix this one. Is that we can use a call function inside the new promise. So we make a set timeout. Yeah, before I say the thing that before I said what is a set timeout, before I continue, I should say what is basically the set timeout is a built-in JavaScript function that used to execute execute a specific function in or a block of code in after a specific delayed. So basically we have here a delayed and we want to reject this method, this promise after this delayed. So let's see how can we do it. So I have set timeout. The set timeout takes two arguments, a function and the delay, and the delay is t because we want it to fail after amount of time, after a t amount of time. So I will just say reject, and it was I should copy this message. However, this will not work because in order to use the reject method, I should have a promise, because the reject method it's a promise method actually. So what I should do actually, I will return a new promise. Okay, and the promise has it has a function and has to okay, and yeah, and basically the promise here has reject, I guess no, resolve and reject, and I'll put the set timeout here inside the this block of code, and it will be reusable right now. And I will call the function fn that we wanted to call with args, and if it works, if everything, then I will call resolve. It didn't work, I will just dot catch, I will call reject. So we can create here, we create here a new promise that resolves as soon as the pass function resolved or rejects This essentially emulates the past function without affecting it at all. To satisfy the requirements, all we have to do is to add a timeout, which can force the promise to be rejected after a specific amount of time. Let's submit this to make sure if it's working or not. Okay, so let's go to the second approach. The second approach is that we can handle clearing timeout. In this example, if the function promise fulfills before the time limit elapses, the rejected logic will still be triggered unnecessarily. Okay, so at some point in the future, this has no effect on the external behavior of the function, because a promise can only resolve or reject once, and rejecting a resolved promise does nothing basically. However, imagine if the time limit was a set of a very long time, these blocks of code will have to be stored in memory or for a long time until they are eventually executed by the JavaScript event loop. This could be considered a memory leak, and a professional implementation should avoid this. However, it isn't a requirement for the problem to know that, but we are doing it in a fancy way right now. So what we can do is that we can just put, first of all, that we have const, we call it timeout, and it will equals set timeout function. Okay, and I will do I will call if in the args and resolve and catch, and if everything finished, I will just clean it up. So I'll just use the finally, and I will use give me a minute here to just see, and it just takes a callback function, and I just call a clear time out, and I'll just put this timeout as an argument. Okay, so basically to achieve not having memory leak, we can use the fact that setTimeout returns an integer ID, which is effectively a reference to the block of code to be executed. You can then use the built-in clear timeout ID to approach the execution of the code. We can also take advantages of the promise finally method, that callback function, that callback path that will be executed. Okay, so when the promise resolved or rejected, we use the callback path to it, and it will be executed basically. So let's just talk about the clear timeout, because I guess it's not that famous. The clear timeout and the set timeout. Basically, the clear timeout and set timeouts are two related functions in JavaScript used for scheduling delayed execution of code. They are commonly used together to control the cancel schedule action. So if we talked about the set timeout is built-in JavaScript that schedules the execution of the callback function or a block of code after a specific delay in milliseconds. Okay, it sets up a timer that waits for the given delay and then triggers the execution of the provided function. And basically we talk about the clear timeout. The clear timeout is a function used to cancel the previously scheduled execution set up by the set timeout. It clears the timer before the callback function is executed effectively, preventing the function from running after the specific delay. The clear timeout, as you can see, it takes something called timeout. Let's call it let's call it, if we call it timeout ID, it will work, because the timer ID is a unique identifier returned by the setTimeout. So basically, the setTimeout returns an ID. It's a unique identifier, and the clear timeout take is to just prevent that from happening. So let's just do it. We have maybe we have another approach, is that we can use promise race. Actually, this video about promise, so yeah, I will use promises out. Let's just delete all of that. I guess we'll delete all of it. Maybe no. Let me keep the set timeout. Okay, and yeah. Okay, so okay, let's keep the set timeout, and maybe I will. Okay, let's just delete everything. Let's delete everything and start fresh. So first of all, I'm thinking about using the promise.race. So let's just say that we have const time limit and a promise. I will put the time limit in the promise, and it will equals a new promise, and this new promise will have takes a callback function, and it's resolve, and reject, and we have basically we have a set timeout. It's this promise we have here. We have another one. I will call the function const the return promise, which will be the function, will be if in with all args. Okay, and maybe I'll just return promise dot race. And it will takes an array of promises, which will be the timer, and the return the promise. So basically here we simply simplify the code by using the promise.raise function. It accepts an array of promises and returns a new promise. The return promise resolve or reject within the first value of the promises resolve or reject. Maybe you can use an async await solution also. This is the fourth solution. So this one is that let's say that we return a promise. We return new promise, and this one it's async, and it takes two arguments also, resolve and reject, and yeah. And basically we have the timeout. Let me copy the timeout, sorry, because I don't want to do it again. And we will have a try catch block. So try, and we have catch, and the catch has error, and in the error we put the reject, and we put the error as an argument. And in the try, we'll try to call the function const result equals await. We're waiting for the if in args. We put the args, all the args in the operator, and we just resolve this with the result if we need, if it's there, and if everything is finished. I just want to clear time out with the timeout because it's return ID. And yeah, that's it basically. Also, this is the fourth solution, and let's just test this one. I guess all of them works actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope my solutions work pretty good. If you like my content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and see you in future problems.